This is Hugo Girl, the podcast, where we read Hugo Award-winning novels and sometimes other stuff. Today we're reading a Hugo Award-winning novel. I'm Lori.
I'm Amy.
I'm Haley.
So hi. So we got a new comment. We got a new review on Apple Podcasts. So you guys know that's kept me going for the past 3 weeks. So happy about it. I'm going to read it because it's short and it's from Puppeteer 107. I'm always so curious about who are these people? Mm-hmm. Where do they find us? Because I'll post them on social media and nobody's ever like, hey, that was me, So it's just like a mystery, which sort of adds to how fun it is for me, honestly. I'm like, there's some person out there that likes listening and we don't even know. It's not even our moms.
Maybe it's an AI.
Maybe it is our
It's
moms.
definitely not me making new accounts every week.
I can tell you it's not my mom. She doesn't know the first thing about Apple Podcasts. So.
All right. Well, Puppeteer 107 says, thanks for the food talk. Food is such an integral part of any world building, but it rarely gets the credit it deserves. I never realized how much I like hearing people dissect fictional grub until finding 3 smart ladies from Atlanta.
That's us.
Yeah, that's nice. So thank you, Puppeteer 107. Please wave at us on social media if you follow us on any social media.
With a puppet hand, preferably.
I don't know. That might be spooky.
Tis the season.
Oh, do you know what I'm going to decide?
What?
Mary Robinette worked in puppetry for a long time, and I'm just going to decide that it's Mary Robinette.
RBK is our best friend. It checks out. It checks
RBK,
out.
you just combined RBG and Mary Robinette into our mecha hero. Okay, all right. So today we're talking about The 3-Body Problem by Cixin Liu, and a note on pronunciations. I put a lot of effort today into figuring out pronunciations and practicing them. And the thing is, though, anywhere that I find them is from an American. Yeah. So I don't have a good way of knowing that I got them right. And but I did try very hard, and I'm going to keep trying. And also, I read good things about Google Translate's audio, and I was able to find the character names in English and Chinese. So I pasted the characters into Google Translate and played the audio. Nice. And people had said that Google Translate was pretty good with its Chinese pronunciation. So hopefully. So anyway, we're going to do our best, but apologies if we mess it up. Alrighty, so this book won the Hugo Award for Best Novel in 2015. It was originally published in Chinese in 2008, and Liu was the first Asian author to win, and this was the first translated novel to win. It was translated by Ken Liu, who is a Hugo Award-winning author in his own right, and is probably best known for writing The Paper Menagerie, which won a Hugo. And then another interesting fact is that 2015 was kind of peak sad puppy times. And so this novel won despite the sad puppy voting block getting a couple of books on the ticket, and also rabid puppies. And I was going down a rabbit hole reading about them, and then I was like, I need to read about this book and not about...
too short.
Yeah, I know. So just some bad people were trying to do some bad stuff, and this book won, so that's great. Let's see. So 3-Body Problem was originally serialized in Science Fiction World in 2006 and then published as a book in 2008. And it became one of the most popular science fiction novels in China. It received the Chinese Science Fiction Award in 2006. It's called A Galaxy, I believe, according to Wikipedia. There was a film adaptation in China, but according to Wikipedia, that was halted. Not sure why. And I think Netflix also has the rights to produce... yes, right there on the cover of the book. Oh, it's on Haley's book. It's not on my book. Is it going to be a series or movies?
I think it's a series. Yeah, okay. There's way too much for a movie. My God. Yeah.
I'll be interested to see what they do with it.
Yeah.
I'll watch it.
And along those lines, Netflix came under some fire for the series because of some comments that Liu made about Uyghur Muslims in China and how they're being treated in re-education camps. There's a very interesting, lengthy New Yorker article, which we can link in the show notes, an interview with him, and he kind of shrugged about it. He was like, I think the government is helping them, and it's all fine. And so Netflix came under some fire about that, and Netflix was basically like, we bought the story, we like the story, doesn't have anything to do with what the author said, and so it sounds like they're going to move forward with it. But I felt like we should acknowledge that that was not a nice thing to say. And, I encourage people who are not familiar with that situation to read up on it. I'm not going to talk about it further because I'm not sufficiently educated to talk about it. But I thought we should definitely mention it. Okay, so a little more about the book. The English translation was published by Tor in 2014. It was also nominated for Best Novel for A Nebula. And one funny thing that I wanted to mention that I read in that New Yorker article was that the author, he came to DC for this interview, and they drove by the Trump Hotel, and the article author said that he started laughing, and he said to her, out of all the American presidents, he is the only one whose speeches I can understand directly without translation. There are no big words or complicated grammar. Everything he says is reduced to the simplest possible formulation.
That's true.
And that is true and also part of the problem. All right.
It's like when I was learning French and I would read children's books.
Yeah. Okay. So, plot summary time? Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. Very brief plot summary, because this book spans a lot of time and a lot of things. So, oh man, this is one that I wrote when I was just feeling sort of tired, and I didn't go back and expand on it. So we'll see what I said a few days ago.
So I actually thought that I was DM, so if you don't want to do the plot summary.
You did?
I thought it was me.
Is it you?
We normally clarify.
I don't know.
We should.
We did it. Part of me was like, I shouldn't clarify. I should know. So I just did it.
No, I went back and checked the last couple of episodes. I'm pretty sure it's me.
I mean, I totally believe you.
Haley's like, why is this woman just started talking like she's in charge?
Should we record a competing intro?
Have people vote on it.
Release it as a bonus.
Dueling summaries.
We're gonna A/B test the podcast. Yeah.
All right.
No, you're fine.
All right. Okay. So a bunch of scientists start killing themselves. I forget exactly why, but fancy international police loop this guy Wong into helping them by infiltrating a spooky cabal of scientists and other elites. There's an immersive VR game that illustrates the problems facing the extraterrestrial society on the planet Trisolaris. It has 3 suns. That's where the 3-body problem comes in. Then we find out the Trisolarans are coming here, somewhat aided and abetted by this cabal of scientists. We find out that the Trisolarans have sent fake protons to Earth to goof up studies of particle physics, which makes scientists go insane and take their own lives. Their goal is to decelerate Earth's technological advancements. Otherwise, by the time they arrive on Earth, we will have the technology to blast them out of the sky before they can conquer us. The end. Importantly, the story is told in present-day chapters. Present day starts in the 60s and leaps forward, and then flashbacks. So, once we've moved forward, sometimes there are flashbacks back to the 60s, to the suffering, imprisonment, disillusionment, and research of a woman named Ye, who ultimately is the original betrayer of Earth and humanity and one of the leaders of the spooky elite cabal. That's my summary. Haley, do you want to do yours too?
Mine is a little bit more, You
didn't have to.
With this book, I don't think 2 summaries will hurt.
Yeah, that's true. All right. Mine is a little bit more, yours is very high level, and I just couldn't think of a way to do high level that made any sense, but yours was good. Okay. You know what? I'm good.
Okay. All right. Well, moving on to goodies from Goodreads. Anybody have any reviews to share?
Looking for these this time was very funny to me because it's like people are either like, this is the most mind-blowing science fiction book I've ever read. Go read it immediately. Or people are like, what the hell did I just read?
Yeah.
I don't understand why everybody likes this book. And it really did seem to bounce between those two things. And so finding quippy, reviews there weren't really any. There weren't really any, but the one that I liked was this one. By D.P.S. Schubert on Amazon. Gave it 2 stars. Said not very interesting. And then the review is, even as a novel of ideas, this book is meandering and underdeveloped, to say the least. Is it an allegory of Chinese politics, the Cultural Revolution? Is it an examination of humanity's unredeemable flaws? Is it an epistemology? Well, the problem is it's all of these and more, but meanders all over the place, and in the end kind of peters out everywhere. And that was pretty much how I felt about it, except for I think I saw a little bit more redeeming qualities in it than that, but he basically makes a point. He goes on to just kind of make a point that there's not a lot of emotion in the book, which to him was sort of the fatal flaw in the book, which I think is not quippy or funny, but it's kind of summed up the way I felt. I found a couple of other reviews that were like kind of the same. Like, although I did like the one that was, for reasons that if you've read the book, you'll understand that the title, it's by someone named Three Bodies as a Problem. And the title is "Do not read!" exclamation point. Do not read! Two exclamation points. Do not read! Three exclamation points.
Yeah, I did note that a lot of the critical reviews were, just like, I didn't like it that much. The characters felt flat. I didn't like it. And
Right.
that's a perfectly valid reason to not like a book.
And too much science was a lot of it,
There's
too.
definitely a lot of science.
Yeah.
I found one positive review that was still critical, in a way that makes sense to me, I think. This is from somebody called The Book Smugglers.
Oh, Book Smugglers sent us the cookbook.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh,
Book Smugglers.
Oh, cool. I didn't know that. It is possible to argue that though the main character of the novel is not one single person, rather the main character is Earth, or humanity as a collective. That's who or what we are here to root for or against, depending on where you stand when it comes to appreciating how much our planet is worth. That's another fabulous side of the three-body problem, as it's almost a choose-your-own adventure. You can choose sides and play this game any way you want. With all that said, the book does have a few structural problems. There's a lot of info dump, but I was happy to give those a pass, given their fascinating content. The exposition, though, was quite clumsy. At one point, a major character says, literally in the middle of a standoff, "Let me tell you what happened in the past," and then proceeds to tell another character what happened then. So I get that. I think it's totally worth saying that, like, if you don't like science, you're not going to like this.
And this is hard sci-fi.
Oh, yeah. There's some stuff that, like, the scene where Ye is about to kill those two men, all she had to do was cut, like, that rope, but there's, like, a 3-page description of, like, the clay surrounding. And I just didn't, I just was like, next.
Yeah.
So.
All right, I've got an excerpt of one. This is from Jake on Goodreads, and he says, in part, "A quarter of the way in, to be dehydrated, packed into a barn, and eaten by rats felt like a small mercy."
I do like to imagine the little dehydrated. I guess we'll get to the dehydration issue, but I like to imagine little dehydrated people as little strips of jerky with clothes, with clothes on.
I really liked that. But Amy, I agreed with how you described the two types of reviews that you saw. I feel like yes to all of that. I went through that, like, while I was reading the book. I would be very engrossed, and then I would be like, and then I would be very engrossed again, and I'd be like, yeah, this is good, and then I would be like, I'm gonna throw this book.
Well, you know what's funny is I read an NPR article that came out when the translation came out, and they said something along the lines of probably due to standards of, like, Chinese novel structure versus Western novel structure. Like, there's no rising action, climax, falling action in this book ever. It's like you don't get that. You don't get that build in that release. It's sort of just a wave pattern almost, and you have to kind of just ride it along.
Oh, a wave pattern. That's very meta.
Oh, it is very meta. You're right.
Sine wave.
Because science.
Well, and also knowing that it was published as a serial, that also really informs
I didn't know that. That does help.
But yeah, it is important to acknowledge that this, the translation was meant to be somewhat written for us, but the story was not for us, right? We weren't the target audience. I mean, we are to some degree. Of course, he wants to write a story that will... Liu grew up reading American science fiction, and so, of course, he has that backdrop. But, like, this is a story about Chinese people and set in China. And so, it makes sense that it's not going to resonate with us to a degree. So I think it's important to acknowledge that, like, what is their literary tradition is not what we're used to always seeing.
Did you guys read the translator's note at the end?
I did. I thought it was very helpful.
I thought it was very helpful, too. And I almost wish I'd read it before I read the book.
I was just going to say that. I think it would have been helpful before I read the book because, we talked a little bit before about how there were some really awkward spots where, like, you're reading along, and then suddenly it's like, that sentence doesn't feel right to me. And then when you read the translator's note, he was like, these are Chinese people speaking. So, like, it would take something of the flavor out of it if I completely changed every sentence to make it fit an American English speech pattern or, just make it feel completely familiar to us. So that, that wasn't an accident. And I think that I do wish I had read that before I started the book.
Note to publisher. Next versions, put that at the beginning.
And unlike, like, when you translate something to French, which I've done before, like, the chair, la chaise, in Chinese and other, languages that are just formulated differently than Western languages, like, they don't have articles. Like, there's no the chair, there's chair. So, I mean, it's just a different way of thinking.
Yeah,
so.
It does. And language 100% like affects the way you process and the way you talk and the way you see the world and, like, everything. So and Chinese culture, from what I can tell, it's very different from Western culture. So there's a lot going on underneath the surface here that we will never, ever be able to understand unless we do a whole lot of Chinese culture research, I think.
It would have been interesting if the first translated book for the Hugo Awards was not something as complicated as this. So it was just like a soft science fiction character study.
Fantasy novel.
Yeah. With like 6 characters and like very complicated or very uncomplicated plot.
Oh, well, this is what we got.
Yeah, because this is sprawling, to say the least. And I decided to read the Wikipedia summaries of the next 2 books, and the books span, I think, almost 19 million years.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult to imagine the scope of the story. And I did just read the author's postscript. Did you read that? Where he said that he learned at kind of an early age that he was able to conceptualize things on a macro and micro scale that most people just like shrug their shoulders and are like, as we've said many times, well, I'm just like, well, okay, a light year. Sure, that's really far. He is able to sort of grasp the scope of that. And he also said on a micro scale, which is not something I thought about. So I also thought that might have been helpful to read before the book, because when the Trisolarans are talking about sort of unfolding a proton, I mean, I really struggled with that. But then when he was talking about I can grasp the largeness and the tininess of things, it sort of made more sense to me, coalesced for me.
And the way he described a light year in his note at the end did more to make me understand the concept of how big a light year is than I think anything I've read to this point. Like, it was fascinating the way he described it. And like, so the unfolding the proton, I had to think of a tennis ball. Have you ever seen the inside of a tennis ball?
No.
I just read the words. And
Well, it's like so you take a tennis ball, you got a tennis ball, right? Yeah. You take a tennis ball and you crack it open, and you take all the stuff that's in a tennis ball and you spread it out on the ground. It's a lot.
I didn't know there was anything in a tennis ball. I thought about...
Or it might be a baseball.
I thought about intestines.
Yeah.
And I thought about Aero bars, those candy bars with all the little bubbles inside.
Oh, okay.
I thought about funnel cake. and also, more candy, I thought about donuts. Because, I have read that a donut that doesn't have a hole in it has fewer calories than a donut with a hole in it, even though there's more food there because there's less surface area for the frying to touch. So that's how I understood
Perfect.
this.
I feel like I was very well set up for this book only because I recently went to Salt Lake City to see my dear friend Mati. And Mati made me watch a YouTube video about dimensions. And it's about basically the conceptualization of everything from 1 to 10 dimensions and like basically what that means. And I was a little drunk.
I wish
watched
I
that video.
had seen that because I just was like,
I'll post it.
I just thought, well, I guess he just made this up. Because I had been reading about the 3-body problem and like struggle sessions. And I was like, I can't learn one more thing. I can't do it.
I like the dimensions thing. I saw a nice TikTok last night. This woman was talking about, she's grieving the loss of her best friend. But she starts talking about how time is basically an illusion. Like, our physical corporeal existence happens through moments in time. And, but she's like, I feel better sometimes because I'm like, there's somewhere in the space-time continuum where we're meeting for the first time, where we're having lunch last Thursday or whatever. So it was really sweet. So I like thinking about this stuff. What you said about the scope is one of the reasons that I love this book, because it reminds me, and I still want us to read Seven Eves by Neil Stephenson one day, another hard science guy, because there's one part towards the end of the book where he turns the page and it says 5,000 years later. And I love that. And I think that's why I don't...
that's like
Canticle for
Thank
Leibowitz.
Yeah, I mean, so that's why I don't care literally about any character in this. Like, their lifespans, like ours, are brief little blips in all of space-time. So, like, but when a book is filled with this many ideas, it's okay if you don't like the characters, if you like the ideas, and I did.
It's not unlike Moby Dick.
Yeah.
People skip cetology for various reasons, but you could also read it kind of the same. It's like you sort of meander through the book and it takes you places and brings you back. And
yeah, I was always thinking about something, which is cool. So
yeah.
Amy or Haley, to your point about where blips, it's like at the end of the book when the Trisolarans say, "You are bugs! You are bugs!"
The fact that was that petty communication was their last communication to Earth is just your bugs.
I was trying to, this is getting more into plot points, but like I was trying to picture what the Trisolarans look like. And to me, they all look like Maleficent. I don't know why. That's just, they seem kind of mean.
I could not picture them. I honestly couldn't picture them. I guess I kind of started thinking about them as the tall grays, the aliens, That
makes it easy. Or bugs are easy to like.
Yeah, like I couldn't picture them. And I don't know if you really need to, but
Yeah, I mean, I definitely didn't picture a lot in this
But
book.
also they're beef jerky sometimes.
I was just picturing humans because
It's easier.
after the video game, the VR video game,
yeah.
I was just sort of like, okay, I'm immersed in this world, and it's like Isaac Newton is here, and people.
King Zhao.
Yeah, right.
All right. Do we want to get into some?
Let's get
some
into
plot?
it. Let's
Okay.
get into it.
So the two main characters that the story follows are Ye and Wang, and it starts in 1967. And we meet Ye at the beginning of the book. She's a young student who sees her father, who's a professor of physics, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
She sees her father being tortured and killed during a struggle session during the Cultural Revolution in China. She becomes an astrophysicist, and she ends up imprisoned pretty much and working for China at a secure location called the Red Coast Base. And she's told that they're working on attacking enemy satellites, but she later learns that they are actually monitoring space for extraterrestrial communication, and events unfold from there. And then the other character that the story primarily follows is Wang, and he's kind of our contemporary present day. So after the early parts of Ye's story end, it says 40 plus years later. So, it could be like 11,000 years later, or it could be like 42 years. I think it's like mid 2000s. He's a scientist working on nanotechnology. That's his specialty. He's the primary focal character, and we follow him in the present day into the three-body VR game and into the investigation of the various unfolding intergalactic conspiracies and their connections here on Earth. So those are the two people that we'll probably primarily be talking about. And a lot of the reviews, and we've already touched on the kind of flatness of the characters. So it doesn't allow for much emotional complexity. And in the New Yorker article that I read where Liu was interviewed, he's frequently been criticized for peopling his books with characters who seem like, quote, cardboard cutouts installed in magnificent dioramas, which is, that's a very nice way to put it. So he readily admits to this, and he says, quote, I did not begin writing for love of literature. I did so for love of science. So he's just like, I don't care if you care about them, because I don't really care about them. They're a vehicle to explore these scientific ideas.
Yeah, and the ideas are worth it. Like, it's like he's not writing like a Wes Anderson movie where like not much happens.
It took me a while. It took me a while to get used to that in this book. Like by the middle of the book, I was less worried about the fact that I didn't care about any of these people, and about the fact that Wang basically left his wife and child to pursue his obsession with this video game.
I was confused that there was never any mention of that.
We never came. I have a little list of plot points that were abandoned.
Yeah, but why would the book starts with the suicide, and it almost seems like a mystery, but it doesn't turn into a mystery. Like who was dying and why?
There are so many things that are touched on that are just sort of.
It doesn't matter at the end of the day. Like, 'cause we're talking about like the scope of humanity and the stars, but like it was weird to even include it then.
That's kind of where I was too. It's like, okay, so what purpose do these things serve? Like watching the slender young woman get strung up on the barbed wire in the beginning, or like, is it just to show what like the evil that humanity can do, so that we are behind, so that we could possibly root for Ye?
Yeah.
Or is it like, why include that?
I think that was Ye's sister.
Yes,
And,
I agree.
And I think it was.
So it's
giving
her...
us an immediate, in-your-face, stark illustration of kind of the level of fanaticism that was driving people. Because the sort of through line here is like, Ye gave up on humanity and sold out the Earth because...
That's my question. Is that just to show us...
I think so.
Okay.
I think it's a very stark illustration of like what we're dealing with and what she feels like encapsulates humanity.
What is your thoughts on why we learned that Wang is in love with what's her toes that commits suicide?
Yang Dong?
Yes. What point does that?
I wish that my face would come through the podcast because I was so aggravated by it.
I was too. Like, why do we talk about that so much?
I don't know. And
I don't even remember that. Is it mentioned a lot?
Is it because he
like
knows
the
love?
bottom half of a page. Well, I don't know. I think it makes him look foolish because he was familiar with her work but did not know that she was a woman. And then she like walks by, I think, and someone's like, "Oh, that's Yang Dong," and he's like,
immediately in love.
"She's a woman?" and the person's like, "Yeah." and then like his mind is blown, and then he goes home and he's a hobby photographer and he's developing his photos, and he's like, the thing that my photos have been missing all along is her
eyes.
Pardon? What? It's very strange.
And then he finds out that she has died, and it's like, And then he becomes best friends with her boyfriend.
I think that the reason that happens is because he then feels compelled to learn more about her death, and that connects him to the boyfriend, and that connects him to the mom, who we learn that the mom is the big bad.
It's a plot device.
Yeah.
Okay. Much like everything.
A brilliant woman who takes her own life is a plot device. And then, I don't think I'm gonna dive too much into the sexism of this book, because there's so much else to talk about. But yeah, that it didn't sit great with me.
Well, the sexism is such an odd thing, because she's not the only scientist that has taken her life. There are other scientists that are presumably male who have taken their lives, and the women are just as bad as the men in this book, which on a level I appreciate. Mm-hmm. But all the women are slender, and that's the only thing that bugged me.
Well, and you don't see. I read this. It was a quote in a just sort of stray article, and I couldn't figure out who to attribute it to. It was like somebody read it in a review or something, and then it got repeated in a bunch of articles. But it was basically saying that women in this book are never the problem solvers if we are on the side of humanity. Mm-hmm. The women are never the problem solvers. The men are the heroes. The men are the ones trying to save the planet. And maybe that things change in the 18 million years that follow in the next two books. I don't know. But in this book, it is... women are not ever the ones who are solving the problem. They're either causing the problem or jumping ship.
Well, I guess it depends on how you define problem, too. Like, if
right. Because it depends on whose side you're on. Yeah.
I mean, it's jumping forward, but I think Yin Wenji is kind of a badass. So.
Oh, I think that there's something feminist in her, being able to tank all of humanity because people overlook her.
Yeah, this is how I phrased it. She girl bosses her trauma all the way to another solar system, saying, fuck what everyone else thinks, this is over.
She girl bosses.
And I don't 100% disagree with her. I definitely have days where I think humanity is a failed experiment. Yeah. The difference between me and her is that I can't text another civilization and be like, come stomp us, we are the worst.
And then kill two people to prevent them from reading your text messages. So, yeah.
Oof.
Oh, I was going to, I guess we can keep talking a little bit more, but what if which one are you of the three? An Adventist?
Yes.
I'm an Adventist. It's in my notes.
We should get to that.
Yeah.
Yeah. What did I put?
What are my options? Adventist,
survivalist,
and then the
redemptionist.
I think
which one's the religion one?
The redemptionist, I think, the ones where they are expecting the Trisolarans to come and make us better.
Mm-hmm. I think I was a survivalist. Can we just get through to the next century?
I think I'm probably a survivalist too. Because I waffle on whether humanity needs to be stomped out or not. But at the end of the day, I don't think that I would want to just relinquish control to somebody else.
Well, what's so funny is that they think that this is going to be a good thing. They're coming to probably kill us.
Some of them want them to do that.
Yeah. But the other ones though, the survivalists and the
redemptionists.
Redemptionists. I think they're completely deluded.
So okay, maybe background on what that is. So there's a faction of humans who know about the Trisolarans and that they're heading this way, and they have subdivided into 3 sub-factions. Some of them want the aliens to come here and think that they will make us better. Some of them want the aliens to come here and think that they will stomp us into the ground, like the bugs that we are. And some of them are like, I don't know which way it's going to go. I'm just going to be on the side of the aliens so that when they come eradicate humanity, I'll live.
And those respectively are redemptionist, Adventist, and survivalist.
Yeah. Just for context.
But nobody really knows what's going to happen. So you can believe things all you want.
So this leads to my next question. Sorry, we've kind of derailed off.
No, I don't care.
So they are getting space pings from these people. Mm-hmm. They're getting DMs. And these DMs seem to have a lot of information about the Trisolarans, or do they not? And that whole part of the end is just extra information for the reader that the people on Earth don't know.
What?
So the last 20 or so pages of the book, or maybe a little longer, we go to Trisolaris.
Yes.
And we meet some Trisolarans. We find out how they operated once they got the message from Earth.
Uh-huh.
What happened there? There was a Yi counterpart on Trisolaris. Mm-hmm. And we find out everything about what they did. And we find out about them cracking open protons and writing a computer code inside and sending it to Earth. And we found out all about that stuff, right?
Yep.
is that something that the book is telling us, the reader? Or is that something that, is that information that was sent to Earth?
Oh, it was sent to Earth because Wong was like reading it and he was like, oh.
But Ye was also, so did they have that information on the boat, but Ye didn't have it?
I think it was stuff that Evans knew about. Because he like kind of took over control because he was so rich, I think.
So their Adventists were holding on to this information. That,
I think I missed that. I think I thought we were just getting to eavesdrop on Trisolaris.
well, remember the boat slices?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we had the boat mandolin in the Panama Canal.
It was not the Evergreen in the Suez Canal, which I wish that it was.
So at one point they slice open they slice a boat.
Egg slice a boat.
A huge boat. But this boat is housing some Adventists who have, I guess, received communications from this Trisolarians that they have not released to anyone else. And so I was trying to determine if those recordings that they recovered after they sliced the boat open told us all of that we learned at the end, or was it sort of some of it? And
I don't know.
I don't either.
The end got a little muddy.
Yeah, it was a little muddy.
I actually just thought it was us being a fly on the wall as the Trisolarian scientist explained things to their leader. But I mean, I could be wrong about that. It could have been nested within something that one of our Earthling characters was reading.
Because Yi was definitely reading some of it, and that's why she went up and she climbed Red Coast Base in her old age and just died on top of the hill, I guess.
Oh, did she die?
At the end there. I don't know. Things went black for her. I don't know. It was very strange. So I don't know if she read that and was just like, well, my entire worldview is now crumbled. I'm going to go just die.
This man really spent like 20 pages like breaking apart a proton, but like how did the Trisolarians speak English or Chinese?
Well, right.
Yeah. Because everything else goes into so much detail, but like there has to be a way to communicate effectively.
So they had, you mean how did the Earthing Trisolarians communicate?
So
they had self-decoding messages.
Software, basically.
Yeah.
Okay, so like that's like the Deus Ex Machina or like the Ansible type thing.
I don't know. From what I can tell, it's like if you code a message in a certain way and you send it to a civilization that's reached that level of technology, it'll decode itself so you can read it in computer language or something like that.
It could recognize, so it said it could recognize the patterns and basically figure it out. It's like in Hominids when the guy has the Ponter has the iPod, the Palm Pilot built into his arm and he uses it for translation. Once it hears enough English, it's like notices enough patterns and it becomes fluent in English. It's that kind of thing.
Yeah, I guess.
Or like how the TARDIS just automatically translates, or in The Good Place, everyone's speaking their native language.
Well, I think that's what, we've actually done that. That's what our messages from space are. They're self-decoding messages that we've sent out. But they're not like in any language. They're in...
Yeah,
from what I understand.
I don't get it. Like, everything else in a fiction book is like, yeah, it's a magic thing on my wrist, or it's the TARDIS. But, like, it just seems like he would have gone more into it, because he would have did literally unpacking a proton for 20 pages.
Because he made that part up. So he was excited about that
I think that's just something that I think about, too, because, like, if you're, like, on an island and, you know, you have people of two languages that have never met, like, you could be like, bottle. And they'd be like, oh, Bertle. Right? But, like, if you don't think in 3 dimensions, if you, like, I just think it would be so much harder to actually communicate, so...
Yeah, you'd have... Yes.
That's my deal breaker for this book. Not anything.
Not the ship slices.
Yeah.
Do we want to talk about what the 3-body problem is?
I would love to talk about that because I have so many questions about why it's the title of the book.
I watched a video on it. Oh, man. It's so apparent why it's the title.
Oh, good. I can't wait for you to tell me after she's done with this part. Yeah.
I'm going to do this little short. Per Wikipedia, a 3-body problem is any problem in classical mechanics or quantum mechanics that models the motion of 3 particles. So it's basically like you can't predict the movement of 3 bodies that are all exerting gravity on each other. And that's why Trisolaris is so chaotic, because they're the 3 suns and they can't ever predict, like, how are these 3 suns? Are we going to have 3 suns in the sky close to us, far away from us? Is it going to be 2? Is it going to be 1? And that has a massive effect on their weather and really their short-term climate. It seems like they don't have long-term climate because they don't have consistent solar conditions. So I think that's why it's called the 3-body problem.
Well, I know that. Okay. I want you guys to know that I understood that Trisolaris has 3 suns.
Okay, I'm going to need you to be more specific with your question then.
Well, I guess I was... What were you going to say?
Okay, well, so 2 bodies, it's always, like, there's, like, you can always predict where it's going to be.
Yeah.
So the idea of 3 things creating a variable that's always unknown is kind of like if you have 3 friends. It can always be hard to tell. Like,
right.
There's 3 factions in this book.
Okay, so this is where I was going with, like, where the three body problem. The other part of it is, like, is it a pun? Are there three bodies that are creating a problem? Like, is it the dad, the daughter, and the dad, the daughter, and the sister, maybe, or something like that? And that's the three body problem?
No, I mean,
Or,
it's
like,
just, I mean, technically it's called the in-body problem, and body just stands for any mass.
Well,
so
It's purely a
well,
scientific
then I was like,
phrase.
okay, so is it on a larger scale than just the three suns on Trisolaris? I was like, is it Earth, Trisolaris, and something else? Is it like
Yes. The answer to that is yes.
Great.
I read
is
the
it?
Wikipedia
What is
summaries
it?
and I don't want to spoil it. Well, would you want me to tell you and then Kevin can bleep it?
what? Who's it a spoiler for?
People who haven't read the next two books, because I read the Wikipedia
Oh,
summaries
he
of
gets
the next
explained
two
later.
books.
Later.
I don't know about explained, but I have read enough that I think I can tell you that the answer is yes.
Okay, tell me.
Okay. Bleep.
I have a question to tap into our science friends. So they say that when you have three bodies, it's insane. But then how come we always know where Earth, Moon, and Sun are?
Oh, I wondered that too, but they're not all exerting gravity on each other, I think. is the
I
thing.
guess we don't exert.
Yeah,
on them,
we
or at least not
exert-
as much.
Or like it's negligible or something. Like the moon's not moving the sun.
Well,
This is
yeah.
we're scientists.
Like the moon is in orbit around us, but it's not in orbit around the sun.
But it is by proxy because it's going around the sun. I was just
Well, right,
confused.
because it's stuck to us.
maybe you have to share the same center at some point. I don't know. It was there's so
That
much
would be a good
math on the
question for-
Wikipedia page.
I wondered the same thing, and I think it's because the Earth and Moon are not exerting
It's got to be equal, I guess.
measurable. That's a science word.
maybe that's what it is. Like if there were three suns,
Of
Yeah.
roughly the same mass, I
yeah.
think.
That makes sense.
Then that
because the sun very clearly controls Earth and Moon because it's so much bigger.
right, yeah.
I guess.
So I've probably mentioned this before on the podcast, but reading the Wikipedia on time is a mind-expanding situation. Like, it's so fun. But, like, sometimes if you really read up on gravity, it stops making sense. Like,
Oh yeah.
why does it exist?
That's why I don't try. I'm just like, I don't know.
I mean, I try,
drop
like-
something, it falls. You want to know what happened yesterday? I had a plate on the coffee table that had ketchup on it from when I ate some fried shrimp, and and I accidentally kicked it, and I was like, "Fuck, my day is ruined!" As it flew up in the air and then landed on the carpet, ketchup side up. Everybody.
I mean,
That never
You
happened.
must
I
be
was
living
like,
right.
I should go buy a lottery ticket. And then I was reading my used book, Summer of Night by our friend Dan Simmons, who's not really our friend, but we like his books.
Mhm.
And it had a Mega Millions ticket in it.
Oh, was that about Antarctica?
Summer of Night?
Yeah.
No.
What's it about?
It is basically like Dan Stevens cosplaying Stephen King and writing a horror novel.
Oh.
It is actually very good, too.
So three body problem.
Okay.
Okay. One of the things that gets abandoned in this book is the fact that guy solves the three body problem. We just never come back to that.
The dead woman's husband,
let me
who's
look
not
up
very
his-
nice.
I'm looking up his
The
name.
thing is, even if you were to solve the three body problem, what do you do with it? Who cares about 3 stars? You just
Well,
have
I
to
thought
leave.
he didn't. I thought that he did, and then they were like, "Oh, but here's why, not really."
Oh, really? 'Cause I
thought
thought they were
so.
like trying to kill him because they were like, he solved the three body problem and we don't want him to do that because we want the Trisolarans to come here.
Well, and also they were already on the way, though.
Wei Chang.
That's him? Really? Yeah. Okay, yeah, you're right.
So like I feel like we get into his whole story about how he is lazy but smart, and then he goes to the monks and lives with the monks for a while, and then while he's with the monks, he figures out how to solve the three body problem, and then his wife, whose name is escaping me,
Shen.
finds him at the monks and is like, "Oh, three body problem. I'm really into that because of the Trisolarans." And so she takes him out of the monks, brings him home, and then he works on the three body problem and then he solves it. And then that whole thing is just, why did we learn that?
I must have been in a fugue state for that part.
He didn't. I don't think he solved it. There was something that. Yeah. Okay. Here's a Reddit thread. Thank you. $4 on Reddit.
There's a whole subreddit for three body problem.
I mean, don't
people
doubt it.
are really
I don't
talking
doubt
about
it.
it.
Yeah.
It says, didn't Wong log on to the VR game to submit Wei Cheng's solution,
Yes.
only to be
Yes.
told that it's been tried? The Trisolarans have far more advanced computing power and technology than just, quote, quantum computing on Earth, so anyone proposing a new solution for the three-body problem only needs to submit it to the ETO, the SOFON, or shout it out into the air, and the Trisolarans would be able to determine its applicability on Trisolaris.
Oh, yeah, because we learned that later. That's right.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're spying with their sophons.
Oh my god. That is
Sophons.
a thing that's in my soap stuff.
I want to name my next dog Sophon.
So fun.
Okay, so 3-body problem. Anything else on that? Any more math that I'll have to abandon and talk about flying ketchup?
I was expecting the 3-body problem because I knew that it was some sort of scientific concept. I thought it would be more interesting. But it was just like, 3 things can't be in it. We don't know about 3 things.
Well, I thought it was kind of neat.
I guess
Maybe because I didn't read about it. I let it keep its mystery.
I watched an 8-minute video about it, and it's just like, we just don't know. And I was like, okay, cool. Like,
Makes one wonder how life evolved on this planet under such chaotic conditions, such that they are still really struggling under these chaotic conditions.
Well, it doesn't seem like every other version of the video game that he plays is like, it doesn't make it past this age. So like the fact that they're like at the pinnacle of their society is surprising.
Like they're the pinnacle of their society now.
Yeah, like it seems like everyone lasts like 16 days. Like it would take so long, and like it's kind of like in Hinduism, there's like these periods of time where there's like, I forget the time, it's like 80 million years of nothing, and then 80 million years of something, and it just comes and goes and comes and goes.
Well, so we learned at some point that they have either dug way into the ground or they've done something else to keep society going.
They have to, yeah.
Yeah, right. So which is why they are in a situation where they can, like, some people just don't get dehydrated anymore. They just I guess, replicate or do whatever it is they do.
In one of the simulations, though, it's like it was cold with no sun for like 600 years. Like no humans could survive that. Like,
well, they're not humans.
Well, true.
Life
That's true.
Finds a way.
It's a whole lot of hardtack.
I would like to mention for our listeners who may be listening but haven't read it, I want to talk about the dehydration because it is one of the most entertaining things that happens. So when they enter a chaotic era, and this is through our viewing of the game, right? So I don't think we see this happen live on Trisolaris, but
they talk about it, but we don't see it yet.
They have things called dehydrators, and when we enter a chaotic era, the emperor, king, leader shouts out, "Dehydrate! Dehydrate! Dehydrate!" And everyone runs to the dehydrators, and all the water, or whatever is their version of water, gets removed from their bodies, and they're stored in little rolled up people jerky.
Yep.
And that keeps them alive. They can be rehydrated, assuming that local Trisolaran rats don't nibble on them.
How is there another life force on this planet?
Why aren't the rats dehydrated? I guess it's like roaches.
Well, it's like roaches, yeah. But then I was thinking, so when it's like a good period and they say rehydrate, there's got to be like staff who stayed out during the chaotic era, because they just go in and start grabbing all the rolled up people and they throw them into a lake and they rehydrate and they come out of the lake and they're like, okay, back to work. I mean, I like it, and also I thought it was very comical to imagine.
Well, they also describe how it takes like millions of years at one point, because like one part of the planet just gets ripped off, and like there's a molten core just there, and so it takes millions of years for life. It sounds like life is just at least sometimes life is just has to re-evolve.
Yeah, like that's why it seems weird. Like the same type of being would come into play each time. Like sometimes, like, you know, like if you went back in time and stepped on the wrong bug, like we could have weird ears or something. So I don't know.
Do you think that's why their rate of technological advancement remains consistent? Because that's one of the conceits in the book, is that Trisolarans are far more advanced than us, but they advance at a consistent rate, whereas humans' technological advancement is accelerating.
It's like leaps.
So in one 200-year period, we make, you know, X amount of scientific advancement, and then in the following 200-year period, it's maybe like X plus 5 or something. Oh, look, I just used some math.
You mathed.
I mathed.
You mathed.
X plus 5.
It's like, or like 3x or x squared or something. You know, it's just more. So like we're doing more with each chunk of time.
We're getting
and they're
exponentially
not.
smarter, and they're not, or something.
And and they're not. So maybe that's why, because they keep having this reset button, and we have never, that we know of, humanity here has not had a reset button.
Well, and I wonder, like, we are where we're at now because of globalization. You know, the oceans got smaller. We went different places. We, you know, had this huge worldwide economy. Like, I wonder if parts of the world had stayed separate without ocean travel. Like, if some societies wouldn't have reached certain levels. So,
probably. I mean, I think a lot of technology has to do with communication, right? So, if I highly recommend everybody go listen to Stephen Fry's The Great Leap Year or whatever it's called.
Great Leap Forward or something.
Yeah. Like it's about important communication technology leaps. And it's like once we master the art of communicating quickly and with each other, that's when most technology like jumps.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
And so if we had never done that, technology might have jumped, more insularly than globally, I guess.
The takeaway for that you'd think might be that collaboration is key to our success.
Oh, that's insane, Lori.
Survival.
That's insane, Lori.
I mean,
How dare you.
there are some things that we do independently together. Like, we all have booze, we all have bread.
I thought you were going to say boobs.
I thought you said boobs too.
No, booze. The most important things.
Boobs are like fairly universal.
That's true. But but like every culture has wine. Every culture has religion. Like there are things that we all share because we are like the same. But
Yeah.
it's true.
Interesting. I thought of something I wanted to say. Oh, so I think it's important not to mistake what we learn in the game from what we know about Trisolarian culture.
Yeah, that's hard.
Because the game was created by people on Earth based on information provided to them by Trisolarian culture, right?
good
Which
point.
is
It's
which is
propaganda.
not everything.
Yeah.
So Trisolarian culture might not exactly have like completely gone away ever.
That's true.
They might have had some setbacks because of the way that the sun affects their planet, but
yeah,
like
that's true.
I think it's probably less dramatic than the game makes
And that's
it
what
sound.
makes it a game.
Exactly.
Because at one point I was thinking to myself, why is this a game though? Like
It doesn't sound like a very fun game.
what is the objective of the game? And it's to avoid, I guess, the collapse of the Trisolarian
I guess-
society.
I guess
It was just propaganda to get people like.
So yeah, the game. So the point of the game is to find members of the society.
No, it's to help proselytize, and like they say in several different parts that like the only people that like it was a commercial flop, but the people that really got into it were like educated people that had power.
Yeah.
So like it was purposely trying to find people. So
Oh, it's like Scientology, kind of.
kind of, yeah.
I thought about Scientology the whole way
To rope
through
in powerful
this.
people who could influence
Yes.
society.
yeah, yeah.
And then there's there's levels you get to where you get to learn things,
Yeah.
and like it is frickin'
Oh,
Scientology.
a thing that I laughed at. I think I sent you guys some screenshots last week when I was having to do the like internet security training at work, and
Oh,
there were
yeah.
like some very goofy fact patterns and things that I had to be like, I would forward this email to IT and not open any of the attachments. And I basically had to like do that for 2 hours. And so like that same day, I read the part where Wong is in the game and he at one point like explains, he realizes, and it kind of dawns on him why they are having these chaotic suns and what the 3 flying stars means. It means all 3 of the suns are far away, and that's why it's cold. And so he kind of figures out what's going on. And because of that, he gets a lot of prestige in the game, and then people with prestige in the game are invited to join this secret cabal. And so he logs off of the game, and he gets a phone call, and they're like, hello, we need your name, your address, your employer information. And he's just like, okay. And I was like, no, stop. This is a phishing scam.
Send it to IT.
What are you doing, Wong? What are you doing? You need to hang up now and call IT.
I'm glad it wasn't smushing.
Dude, what was? Let's see.
Wailing.
Smishing is the texting one. So I don't know what it is over the phone. It's revolving doors. I don't know. There were so many of them that I had to learn the names of. Wailing was my favorite. for obvious
Wailing
reasons.
was by far my favorite.
But yeah, so I was like, this like guy in his 30s who's like a nanotech engineer. I mean, I know he knows that he's like trying to infiltrate, but it's like so funny that they just call and they're like, what's your mother's maiden name?
No shade to my science friends, but sometimes people who are very smart in one area of their lives are not always super smart in other areas of their lives.
That's true.
True. Facts. That's true. And anyway, it's a good thing he gave the information because then he got invited and then we got to find out what was going on.
Was he a mole or was he really interested in the Trisolarian situation?
I think he was a
Does it matter?
mole who
Or
became
just-
interested, though. I
Yeah,
mean,
okay.
how could you not? Like,
Okay,
if you were a mole, but then like you found out through the course of your moling that these aliens are on the way, and they're also very interesting. Like I think as my therapist says, it can be both.
It can be both. And we haven't even talked about the policeman.
One of the things I thought was interesting, so like I know that there's not this author is not like, trying to paint with detailed nuanced strokes like the human condition, even though he's talking about the human condition writ large. There are little moments, and I found it like there's a stark contrast to like the Chinese peasants living in the country with oil lamps that will never know about astrophysics, and like you have these people that are controlling everything, and I thought that was kind of a cool, like, just because there's certain times when people go to the country, and I thought that was because China is such a big country.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, when Ye goes to that village, so she gets very ill during childbirth, I think, and
She loses a lot of blood, like 2 liters.
She goes to stay, I think because she's been teaching the children in that village.
They love her. Yeah.
And so they love her and they take her in and take care of her. And that was one of my favorite parts of the book. Because you were seeing humanity on an individual level.
Micro, not macro.
And it was beautiful. You know, her, like, basically the woman who kind of became like a sister to her, and they're nursing their babies together and raising their babies together. And her sister is like, do you ever worry that the stars will fall down? And she just like has this moment where she's like, she doesn't know that they're like, I mean, I guess I don't know, a million, billion, a bajillion. I don't know how many miles away stars are.
Yeah.
And she thinks that they're like just up where the birds are. And she has this sort of like stark moment. And then she's like, I didn't give her the science answer.
There's no point.
Well, and like, why? I mean, it makes it, for her, it would make it less special, I think. Even though for Ye, it makes it more special. And I really enjoyed those scenes. Yeah, both can be true.
I do struggle with that idea. It's like, the more you learn, you know, people say the more you learn about something, the less magic it has. And other people are like, no, the more you learn about something, the more magic it has. And it's like kind of that question, I think all over this book.
I think it depends on how you feel that day, maybe.
Yeah, maybe. And the thing that you're talking about, I guess.
Like, I want to learn everything about Antarctica right now. So I'm like, more.
And I just like knowing that there's snow and penguins.
That's true.
I'm glad you brought that up, Haley, because there were some parts of the book that I enjoyed reading so much that I did not stop to make a note of them. And then afterward, I was going back through all my little folded bookmark pages, and I was like, oh, where are all the places that I liked? I only marked the things that I didn't like or I didn't understand.
Yeah, I feel like following the schema of my usual reaction to books like this, I technically shouldn't like this book because, you know, it doesn't have beautiful language and it doesn't have a ton of interesting characters. But I think the ideas are so worth it to me that it's fine. Like, this book made me think in a lot of ways. So I used to read every day before 10th grade, every morning on the bus. The book Contact is one of my favorite books. The movie is great too, but the book is very different. And Contact and Seven Eves, the book that I harp on all the time, they're two novels like this one that really talk about like the preparation for something big happening to humanity. So I think I love that idea, and I will live in that world whenever it's presented to me.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I do think there are some parts where, again, I wish I had marked them, that I think that the language is really beautiful.
Agreed.
There were some places where I was just captivated by what I was reading and like too much to reach over and grab my highlighter or my pencil and make a note of it. And I regret that I didn't make a note of it, but it was because they were like so engrossing. And then there were other times where I was like, oh, please.
Yeah.
Please stop. Just stop.
Or there would be clunky performative dialogue that's like, let me tell you about history, little girl.
Yeah, those would be the parts where I was just like, oh, man.
Have you guys read anything by Ken Liu?
I own a book, one of the Dandelion Dynasty, but I've not read it. I understand.
I'm very interested in reading some of his stuff now because I'm wondering, I would like to see what kind of writer he is when he's not translating something.
Yeah.
I mean, you have such power when you're a translator.
But translating to me is the most fascinating frickin' thing. Have I ever talked to you about it?
Well,
I didn't know if you knew this about me, but I really, really love to think about translations.
I do as well, and I like to think about the nuance of translation versus interpretation, because you could translate something and you get like the words, but the interpretation is when you really carry the meaning and the sense of something. And so I think that that's in his postscript, he talks about that at length, about how, you know, I'm trying to give you the sense of what's going on. I'm trying to communicate it to you, but I'm not doing word for word translation because that wouldn't give you the story. But then in some places he does, because he feels like it's important to maintain the flavor of the culture and the way that people would be speaking to each other.
There's two very distinct styles running through this book. Like you'll run across these very florid sentences that I think are Ken, and then and then the most of it though is this very like
straightforward,
almost percussive,
smart
like
ideas.
way of writing that I think is. Please pronounce his first name for me.
Cixin.
Thank you.
I that's my best.
Okay. That's everything that I found was Cixin. But then sometimes they would put Liu first, and I think one's Asian, one's not.
So Liu is the family name, and in China traditionally it would come first.
Yeah.
And Cixin is his given name, but in the American editions, it's the name is inverted or reversed to suit English speaker conventions.
I got very into the idea of translations when I was looking for a translation of the Brothers Karamazov, because like there's a bunch of different translations of that of Tolstoy running around anyway, or Yeah, Tolstoy, right?
Dostoevsky.
Thank you. I was like, that doesn't sound right. It's Dostoevsky. Anyway, and Tolstoy, though, for that matter. But the person who originally translated Brothers Karamazov basically left out chunks of the book because it was like untranslatable.
Yeah. Some things might be.
And just like, so, and then the question is, all right, well, if you're translating it for Western readers, like, is that okay? Because, like, I mean, maybe what they'll get out of this book with those chunks missing is the same as what somebody would read in Russian, or is what you want to do, like, just faithful.
Well, so I go the opposite way. So that's why I got one of the most recent translations of the Odyssey, because Emily Wilson did it. Like, she was the first woman to ever translate it. And so, like, she's going to necessarily, and she did it on purpose. I mean, I guess you could argue that's like a revisionist translation, but, like, she's going to keep an eye to it, like, with the eyes of a woman, which is, you know, welcome.
Different. Yeah. Translation. Let's do a whole nother podcast on translations.
I'd like to talk about a couple of horror scenes that I really enjoyed.
Okay.
So when I was first reading it and you guys had started it and you guys were both like, I'm not getting into it. And I was like, oh, I love it. The place where I was when Wong first starts seeing the countdown in his photos. So he starts
very different book.
Yeah.
He starts seeing a countdown in his photos when he's developing them. And he realizes, like, this looks like it is spaced out the same amount of, like, seconds or minutes than I actually took these photos. And so he starts taking more and more photos, and it feels like a horror movie.
Oh, it's
where
frightening.
he's taking more and more photos and realizing, like, this countdown is, like, real time. Like, every time if I take a photo 4 seconds apart, the timestamp that I'm seeing is 4 seconds apart. And he's like, is it just me? And he gives the camera to his wife and to his kid, and their photos don't have it. And then he starts seeing it with his eyes. He's just looking around and he sees the countdown. And he's, like, very freaked out, which of course he is. And, like, no one can tell him, even the people in the secret organizations and the police, and, like, they're like, I don't know. Somebody tells him to stop his work on nanomaterials, and then the countdown will stop. And he does, and then it does. And it's so scary.
So who did it?
The Trisolarans.
It was the Sophons.
Yeah, so it's the same way they saw at the end of the book, they see your bugs across their sight, basically, because the Sophons can make...
They can do whatever they
stuff.
need to do, which I found disappointing.
Yeah,
Like the fact that they could just find every nano collider too. I was like, how?
and that's the same time when the countdown's going on is when he sees the magnetic energy flicker. The whole universe
The
just
universe
goes
flickers
and freaks out that other scientist who we never see again. And
What's that quote? It's like, to a sufficiently advanced society, technology is indistinguishable from magic. There's a quote about that. So, like, I guess it'd be the same way if we showed a phone to a peasant in the 14th century. They'd be like, what is that motion? Like, they would think it's fake. So maybe...
Like, the phone could literally do anything that you want to do as a peasant.
That's true.
But, like, even seeing a video to a 13th century person would blow their mind.
I like it when you talk. I think it was you that was like, I just want to go back in time and give a peasant a Dorito. And just
So much
watch
flavor.
their mind just explode.
Yeah, that's a big
It's like
trend.
millions of dollars worth of salt and paprika. I read, there was a Goodreads review that said, after setting up a first genuinely interesting mystery of the book, halfway through, the book resolves essentially by resorting to magic. And I did feel kind of disappointed. Not so much that it's like a little magic-y, but it's like everything is explained by the Sophons. Like, they can mess with every particle collider. They can make you see what they want you to see.
Yeah.
They can do a countdown that's specific to only this one guy sees it, and then when he does what the Trisolarans want him to do, it goes away. And they can also constantly be eavesdropping on all the right people at the same time. There's only 4 of them. And it just like...
there become millions and millions.
Oh, really?
Because once they go into the particle colliders, when they get collided,
that's right.
they break and become individual
Okay. I
Sophons.
forgot that.
Yeah.
You're
I
right.
just assumed that within each Sophon is like the power of like a million people with like with unlimited resources. So.
Yeah, which is to me like I felt like he built this like huge sprawling thing, and then was just like, it was Sophons.
Yeah,
it felt
Sophons
like,
all the time.
it felt like the end of WandaVision. I don't think you guys watched
haven't seen it yet.
It was Agatha all along.
I mean, it's like that's the same criticism of like, you know, how they speak English or Chinese too. It's like it's just a thing that we could do. So,
yeah,
I mean, at a certain point, you've got to be able to write a book, I guess. But yeah.
yeah. I mean, I'm not like mad about it or anything, but I was just sort of like, oh, it's like, and it's like this mystery that builds several mysteries that build through the whole book, and then like you get about 10 pages straight of the Trisolaran scientist explaining how they built Sophons and sent them to the Earth, and they can do literally all of the things that we've been puzzled by, intrigued by, shocked by. It's all just been this little particle, and I was just kind of disappointed by that.
Well, it also had a little bit of a flavor of when you're watching like a James Bond movie, and at the end, the bad guy takes a whole lot of time to tell you everything that they did.
Yeah, I felt like Scooby-Doo.
Yeah. Yes. And we would have got away with it too if it wasn't for this. Yeah.
Except they are getting away with it. I just, that felt a little flat for me.
I was kind of glad that they did, though, because before they explained the Sophons, like 3/4 of the way through the book, they're like, we're going to send 2 protons, that's going to fuck them up. And I'm like, how is 2 protons going to fuck them up?
Yeah.
And then we learn how.
Yeah,
So.
it's disguised as protons.
I'm a little upset he rushed so far through. It felt rushed and also interminable. How they described creating little proton computers, because it was so much of the explanation of what was going on that it felt like we maybe should have gotten hints of it the whole way through or something.
Yeah, the structure of it is what bothered me. It was like all this stuff, and then on the back end, it's like, I'm going to vomit out how this worked.
Yeah. I feel like he spent more time on the human computer, which, by the way, was a very cool thing to read.
When I did not fucking understand that.
When they created the person circuit board.
Dude, that was one of my, like, I'm going to throw this book. I did not understand. And I was like, where's the information recorded if everyone's
the guys in the side going like this?
I read a book about the history of early computing, and, like, back when they used punch card machines, it's amazing of what used to be computers.
They used to be people.
Yeah.
Computers were people.
I am your 13th century peasant. Show me a phone. It is magic. Give me a Dorito. My mind is blown.
I cannot claim to understand everything that I read in the section about the human computer, but
it's cool breaking it down into like chunks of information displayed visually. So.
Yeah.
And that's what computers are.
And I don't understand how computers work. So reading that was a very interesting, visual on how computers work that I had never considered before in my life. I mean, the brain that came up with the things in this book is just...
It's smart.
Mind-blowing to me. Like,
you should read that New Yorker article.
Yeah,
it is good.
I'll send it to you guys. And Haley, you read it already? Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was really interesting about how his mind works. And then when he was talking about, like, I can grasp the scope of light years, I was like, I just believe you.
Yeah.
I don't think he's bullshitting. I believe him.
I was thinking, so I read something last night that was like, so cassette tapes are, in a couple of years, all going to be completely just not working because, like, the magnetic tape doesn't last forever. And CDs have, like, a length of 20 to 50 years. Records last the longest. And then I was thinking about how I only listen to music on the internet now. So, like, little bits of 1s and 2s, which will never decay. Or maybe they will. I don't know.
But also, they're not a faithful reproduction in a way. Like,
well, yeah, but, like, it's good enough for me. So
no, me too. Same. But I think about, I read, or I think I may have listened to a podcast about the first MP3. Mm-hmm. And I wish I remembered what song it was, because the guy talking about creating the first MP3 listened to the same song so many freaking times to get the recreation correct. Because, you know, you record something directly to a physical media. Yeah. It's very different than recreating it digitally. It's just a very interesting concept to me, because, like, listening to digital music is not, you're not listening to the music. You're listening to 1s and 0s tell you what the music is.
Yeah, no, it's crazy.
It's just interesting to me. Yeah.
But, like, when you explain how a record works and it just reads pits and grooves, I'm like, that doesn't mean anything.
I know. No. It's just sound waves digging into it, basically, right?
I know, but, like, how does it make a trumpet sound?
I don't know. I don't know.
So the other horror scene is when we were watching the Judgment Day of the ship get sliced into 40 equal slices by Wong's nanomaterials.
Yes.
Uh-uh.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
The beginning of the movie, the horror movie Ghost Ship, which is exactly what it sounds like. You know how ships have lots of, like, ropes and wires and stuff? There's, like, a dance party on the ship, and then at one point it goes straight across and everybody gets cut in half.
A Juliana Margulies vehicle, this movie.
We should watch it. It's good.
So, in this scene, this is how they're going to steal the data from this ship. They know that all the Trislaran messages are on the ship. It's the ship that belongs to Mike Evans, which I read one review that was laughing about that name. Like,
it's so American.
Yeah. So the ship that belongs to Mike Evans, and they're like, how do we get the data? They'll destroy it. Like, they would rather destroy it than us get it. And so they decide, like, they've got to kill everybody on the ship before they can realize what's happening. And so Big She, the police detective, who's like the brute in the book, but, like, he's the get stuff done guy, and like makes fun of the scientists. He's like, oh, you just sit around and do math all day while I'm out there, like, pistol whipping people, which is, like, not cute. But anyway, he comes up with this idea to use Wong's nanomaterials, nanofilaments, to basically make a giant egg slicer, stretch it across the Panama Canal, wait for the boat to come through, and then it's just going to horizontally slice the boat into 40 slices. And they are like, they really think about it. I mean, of course they did, because this author is like, leaving nothing to chance. So they're like, we got to do it during the day because if they're lying down sleeping at night, then
We won't get their heads.
yeah, or they might be like laying in a bed and pass between two filaments and not get killed. Oh my God. But my question was, they were like, oh, well, with the clean cuts of the nanofilaments, even if a drive is cut in half, we'll be able to repair it. You're in a canal, though. Like, presumably, things are going to get wet.
Yeah.
Also, I thought, with the size of a boat like this, which, I mean, I assume it's like a gigantic boat since they live on it indefinitely, that once enough of it is sliced, it's going to start to just break apart from the weight of it and, like, the structural integrity being damaged, right? Like, I mean, I'm making up science right now, but...
I've seen Titanic. It flips in half and then the butt goes in there.
Right, like, I was just like, they are so sure that data is like, oh, it'll be fine, and we'll just pop in and get it, and it's like... How? I mean, I pop in and get it, but they were just like, we just do. Maybe they have their own sophons, and we'll find out in the next book. Our sophons kept it floating and together.
I think they were saved by the boat careening into the side of the canal because some slices went up on the earth.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, because of the momentum.
Yeah.
I fully believe this was a great job for Navy SEALs. Mike Evans
slicing a boat?
No, just like going and like killing the people.
Like
it would have been so much easier than like putting that together. Hard drives, like shit happens or it goes in the water. Like they should have had a Black Ops Force go.
You a special force unit.
There's so many for hire.
Like Ming-Na Wen on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. She could go. She's the cavalry. I can't remember the character's name right now. Oh, Melinda May.
Yeah.
From Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. She would just go in there and have everybody's neck broken in silence in a matter of minutes.
They explained so many reasons why they couldn't use infrasonic technology and this technology, but like people with guns work.
Why couldn't they use one quiet person?
Yeah. One ninja.
Or I was thinking poison. Like, I think they talked about some kind of poison, but like a poison gas. Like, they were like, nothing will kill them fast enough before someone can get to the drives. And
but like,
did they think that they would? That ship
yeah, like, did they think that they would have like, if they sounded the alarm, would they have like, oh, we got to destroy it? Which maybe that's a little different, I guess. But like,
or tuck it in their pocket and jump in the ocean.
I don't know.
I think he just wanted to use Wong as a filament expert.
I think he just wanted to egg slice that boat,
which is cool. I mean, that'll look great on screen.
So the thing is, while I was like, would this work? You guys are super confident, and I'm seeing ways this can go wrong. I'm seeing variables that could cause this to go wrong.
And everybody's like, that's fine.
To put it in math terms. But that was such a good scene. Wong watching it happen and like his discomfort with like, I'm basically killing a lot of people. And like occasionally some like military muckety muck is like, don't worry about it. It's for the greater good. And it's not on you. We made the decision. Yeah. You just gave us the nano weapons, but it's not on you. And he's just watching it unfold was like such a good tense scene. I would like to read a horror story by this author. I think
that'd be cool.
I think that he builds very good tension because that and the countdown were both. I was just like on pins and needles reading those scenes.
There's an interesting parallel between the cavalier attitude toward slicing that ship open and the cavalier attitude toward cracking open a proton that the Trisolaran scientist has, because like people are continuously like, what's going to happen when you do this? And he's like, it'll be fine. It's kind of insane. We cracked open a boat. They cracked open a proton.
I like all the proton ribbon pasta that just lives in the space forever. They're just like, it doesn't have any width or length or distance. It's just, you're just going to see it.
The proton hair. And it glows.
Maybe that's what our floaters are in our eyes. They're
proton hairs.
Proton hairs. Yep.
Unfortunately, I think they're protein hairs. Sorry, buddy.
Alas.
Let's see. Any other big topics? I have some stray thoughts, but...
The only boob talk I have was that all the wet nurse boobs. There's a lot of boob sharing for the babies.
That's true. There is boob sharing for the babies.
That's like very functional, though. So.
Basically there are really no boobs, just everyone is very slender.
I'd focus on the slenderness of all the young girls.
I wanted to note the... references to Silent Spring by Rachel Carson, because that is the book that influenced Frank Herbert when he got into environmentalism and started writing Dune.
That's also the book that inspired all of environmentalism, essentially.
Yeah.
We only have federal environmental laws basically because of that book, which is interesting. It's a little more complicated than that, but you get what I'm saying. Are we supposed to hate humanity because of what they did to the trees, or are we supposed to hate humanity because of what they did to people?
It can be both.
It can be both.
What does your heart tell you?
It could be both.
I really enjoyed the shooter and the farmer. Do you remember that? I was glad that I folded that page over because I'd completely forgotten about it. But it was basically about how like you can observe the same thing happening over and over again and be completely wrong. Yep. And when Wang starts to think about it, he's like, yeah, everything we think we know about science could be basically just like
I have no recollection of that.
Okay, so
It is really cool. It's a
cool.
small little bit. But
It's like a little thought experiment.
I've been saying this my whole life because like everyone's always like the speed of light is the cosmic speed limit. I was like, that we know of. I mean, if you talk about what people knew in the 1400s, they'd be like, a cold is deadly. Baths give you can't. You know,
Right. Germs are created spontaneously, and germs don't exist. First of all, they don't even know about germs.
I mean, another 600 years, who knows what's going to change?
You got those humors that go bad.
All the bile.
Or God just hates you.
Okay, I'm going to read the shooter and farmer thing. It's
cool.
short, and I think it's very interesting.
Okay.
So, in the shooter hypothesis, a good marksman shoots at a target, creating a hole every 10 centimeters. Now, suppose the surface of the target is inhabited by intelligent two-dimensional creatures. Their scientists, after observing their universe, discover a great law. There exists a hole in the universe every 10 centimeters. They've mistaken the results of the marksman's momentary whim for an unalterable law of the universe. And then in the farmer hypothesis, it says, has the flavor of a horror story. Every morning on a turkey farm, the farmer comes to feed the turkeys. A scientist turkey, having observed this pattern to hold without change for almost a year, makes the following discovery. Every morning at 11, food arrives. On the morning of Thanksgiving, the scientist announces this law to the other turkeys. But that morning at 11, food doesn't arrive. Instead, the farmer comes and kills the entire flock. And then Wang says he felt the road shift beneath his feet like quicksand.
What was that analogy in Chinese? It couldn't have been a Thanksgiving turkey analogy.
It could just be like a turkey dinner, probably.
So curious. Anyway.
Yeah, the timing is important, though. Yeah, that's an interesting question.
I do remember that now, and I remember thinking that I wanted to read that book, Flatland. Have you all read the book, Flatland?
Mm-mm. I think...
It's that idea. People who live in one dimension can't comprehend what people in another dimension see.
Yeah, and like, I think about, what would the sixth dimension look like? But I think what those two problems really help illustrate is like the concept of scale. Like if you wait long enough, things will change.
Yeah.
And if you, what's the other one? So it's like waiting and then like, yeah, it's just like your perspective is very limited.
And if we had everything figured out already, scientists wouldn't science.
That's true.
Scientists keep sciencing because there's still stuff we don't know.
Oh, absolutely.
And we can't assume that what we do know is just the
even stuff like gravity is technically still a theory too. I mean, like there's still things we don't understand about it. Like it's behaved every way similarly for the past millions of years. But what if it changed tomorrow?
I don't understand why ketchup did not go all over the carpet or me. It didn't even when it hit the floor. No ketchup flew up and landed on me in these white pants that I'm wearing right now. I don't understand why that happened.
Apparently, if we learned that all of our scientific theories are incorrect, the scientists will just commit suicide. So that was the most unbelievable part of this book to me.
Okay, so the long game, we should talk about that a little bit. So the long game that the Trisolarans are playing is that by sending these Sophons to disrupt the results of particle physics experiments and then doing other things to sort of disrupt what we understand to be all of these laws of physics, then scientists are just like, well, everything that I really, really believe. I mean, it's like a loss of faith, right? It's like, It's the same thing as like losing your religion, I guess, is like, I really believed in this. I thought it was provable. I had been studying it. I devoted my life to it. And it turns out it's all wrong. Like it doesn't exist. And they can't cope with it. And many of them are taking their own lives. And the reason that this is happening is that the Trisolarans are like, we must decelerate the rate of scientific advancement on Earth. And so we're going to do that by making all of the scientists fall into despair and either refuse to continue their craft and study or even tragically take their own lives.
It's very poetic.
I just don't think it would happen. We only know about a couple in China that have taken their own lives. There's a lot more scientists in the world.
It would make every scientist I know like angry to like figure out the problem.
They'd be like, why isn't this right? I got to do more
harder. Yeah.
Well, I also have to wonder if Yang Dong didn't take her own life because she realized that her mom was the author of all of this. Like maybe at some point she realized that it wasn't her despair over physics.
What did her suicide note say?
She discovered that her mom was Thanos, and she was like, get rid of them all.
I think it said physics does not exist, something along those lines.
There's nothing that they could do that would, like, unless they turned off gravity, like, there's only so much they could do. And I mean, like, they were messing up experiments in large hadron colliders that are like pretty rare. Like physics, like things were still falling, cars were still driving, there was still friction.
And they were trying to get Wong to stop his research in technology and nanomaterials because he was working to build a space elevator.
Yeah.
I don't exactly understand what that is, but they wanted him to not do that. So the countdown was to scare him into not doing that. So it's interestingly tailored to each person's like particular susceptibility to being frightened away from their work.
It's a little bit Terminator flavored. Like, I'm going to go back in time because they're going to the future and they're going to stop them from doing something. It's cool. Which is nicer than killing them, I guess. I mean, they are causing deaths, but like...
But they're gonna come kill them eventually.
Yeah, I think they're gonna kill them. The point is, like, then we won't have, like, space rockets that can just blast them as soon as they get here.
That's true.
Or egg slice them as soon as they get here.
Scientists killing themselves.
Amy, did you want to say what a space elevator is?
It doesn't matter.
It is exactly what it sounds like. It's just a way to, like, get to low Earth orbit quickly and stably. So,
Because it takes a lot of energy and stuff to get outside of the atmosphere without
you've got to
having
go like
a physical propulsion. Like
something like 8 miles a second to break.
Yeah, so
gravity.
a space elevator would be an easier way to get to space without having to do all that.
Plus, you can stop on the 3rd floor for ladies' goods, lingerie. You're welcome.
Yeah, that was good. Good one, Haley.
I have such a good answer for Star Wars: The Lord of the Rings.
Okay. Well, let's start. Does anybody have a feminist favorite?
Just what I said earlier about Yinji girl bossing her trauma to the next solar system.
Girl bossing her trauma. That's really funny. I did not have a misogynist. Wait, you said misogynist?
Feminist favorite.
I don't think I have a feminist favorite.
I do like the fact that he made the character of Yi Wenji a woman. He didn't have to, but I guess conversely, you could view her as like a Pandora that's like opening up.
Yeah,
Earth to
I'm not sure
ills.
she's a good guy. Which she doesn't have to be a good guy.
She's extremely competent.
She's so smart.
She's so smart.
She is so smart. I would have liked to, I think toward the end of the book, we got to be in her head a little more. Because I feel like in the chapters where we're riding along with Wong, we really feel what he's feeling. And that I felt that in those 2 horror scenes that I talked about a minute ago, where I was really like right there with him. I could see what he was saying. I could feel what he was feeling. And rarely did I get that with her. So even though she's like very powerful, very, very intelligent, I did somewhat towards the end eventually, but there were so many chapters about her where I didn't really feel like I was in the story with her.
I think some of that can be explained. They say kind of that she's sort of frozen inside because of what happened to her.
Yeah.
So she might not have deep feelings.
That's true.
She has PTSD 100%.
I don't know. That might be a little overly generous to the author, but...
Well, and there are other women in the book who are explicitly described as cold, so...
Maybe he just thinks women are cold.
Yeah, I don't...
Especially
I'm
science women.
not sure what's going on here.
Wong's wife didn't even care that he was just gone.
Well, and Wong's wife, I'll just say, like, my feminist favorite, I guess, was that a woman is in a position of power to betray all of humanity, and that, and I do think it does sort of like, she's overlooked because she is a woman, and so she does get to do this. So it's like part of the, I think, probably discrimination against her is why she's able to get away with this, and so that's like an interesting thing that he's playing with there a little bit. But it's like, I'm not going to call it my feminist favorite. It's like a feminist maybe.
Yeah, I mean, apart from the parts where they talk about thin women, which I don't really recall, because I kind of skimmed over some stuff. The book is a little bit sexless and genderless.
Well, I was going to say, it's really not about people, so it's not really misogynistic or feminist. It's he does use a lot more male characters, but honestly, it's probably just realistic.
I mean, that's just not just Western society, but also, yeah.
So my misogynist moment is the depiction of Wong's wife. The brief moment when we meet her, and she doesn't know how to use a camera, and I like a regular, not a digital camera. And I was thinking, like, I think that they're about like our age, right? Like they're probably mid to late 30s at this point in time, because they're both like scientists, PhD. She's a doctor, so they're like at least in their 30s in 2010, 2012 ish, whenever this is set. So like, they had cameras when they were kids. Like, I know how to wind film. Like, and he's like asking his wife and his kid to take pictures, and he's like, I kept having to tell her to wind the film, and she's like, so complicated. And then it's just like Wong's wife, a doctor, and it's like, I just felt very much like that was trying to like throw a scrap to the women. Like, she can't understand how to operate this camera, but don't worry, she's a doctor. Everyone's very smart. We're all equal. But in my imagination, she had like her hair in pink sponge rollers and was waving around a frying pan going, why is this camera so hard?
Well, and he really went out of his way to make his hobby, like, he's really artsy. It's black and white.
He'd have a man bun these days.
I did chuckle when he was trying to decide where he wanted to go take pictures on the weekend. And it was like, he used to like to go out into nature, but he's middle-aged now and that's too far. So he takes photographs photographs of cityscapes, and I was like, no, he's my age. I still like to go on little hikes. Food. I don't
one morsel.
I don't think anybody eats
there's
anything.
I'm pretty sure somebody mentioned one of the peasants bringing some fermented cabbage dumplings.
Yes,
Oh,
that
you're
happened.
right.
They did bring food.
You are right.
And I was like, ooh, I could eat some dumplings right now.
I could eat some fermented cabbage dumplings. I'd put that away. That sounds good.
But that
Good
was
catch.
it.
Yeah,
And
nobody.
cigars. Lots of cigars.
None of these people who are like working around the clock are even ever like tucking into a chicken sandwich and getting crumbs on it. And I think it's one of the things that you talk about a lot, Haley, where it makes something so accessible and it feels more real when you like they talk about the smell of the coffee and the frying bacon.
It's
You
like-
guys are gonna love the next book.
I
There's
know.
so much breakfast in it.
I made bacon this morning.
As you should.
It's very humanizing, and as we know, Liu is not interested in doing that. He wants to tell us a story about science, or he wants to tell us the story that's within science. I think is
These
maybe
people
more like
are
how he thinks of it.
Living on science. They're eating science. They're drinking science.
Sometimes when I get sad about, part of the human condition is you've got to feel everything and you've got to experience everything. And remember in City of Angels with Nicolas Cage when he becomes human and he's like, I get to eat a pear, and he's so excited about it.
Oh, the pear's the worst thing.
I love pears.
Wait till he finds out about tacos.
I love pears.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
But they can be kind of grainy. Yeah, so part of why I like reading about physical things is because that is what makes us, smelling bacon and, getting your heart broken or whatever, crying over something. But you gotta take the good and the bad too. But food just helps ground you. I also like in Ocean's 11, Brad Pitt is always eating in every single scene, which is the opposite of this problem. Literally every single scene. And then Sandra Bullock copies that in Ocean's 8. She's always the one. No, or is it Kate Blanchett? One of them is always eating. Or maybe, one of them. Yeah, one of them's always eating. And it's just a cool thing. It's because not every movie has time to be well, then I had to go take a poop and take a shower and I'm a human being that has a body. But it's nice sometimes to be reminded of it. And this book did it exactly twice maybe. So
in fact, you're so not human. You can be dehydrated and stacked in a tower. And the rats are the only food in the.
That's what I have under my food.
Go ahead, girl.
Nobody eats
Go ahead,
anything.
girl.
Well, I just said nobody eats one thing except when the rats eat the dehydrated trisolarans, and I forgot about the dumplings. So good catch.
The only food is us.
And even the dumplings, they don't sit down and have a meal. She's they just exist. So
they brought the food.
Yeah, we
don't want anybody to eat it.
It's implied that someone ate them.
Yeah.
they have the strawberry social, but they don't eat the strawberry pies.
All right. Did you like the book?
I really like this book.
I think I like it more now that we've talked about it.
There's a lot
honestly.
to talk about.
Yeah. I think I was struggling with a lot of the concepts, so I was a little frustrated at times, but I definitely never considered not finishing it. And I think I'm going to come down on the side of liking it.
I found some times where I was like, I like this. I would read this even if it wasn't for podcast.
Okay. I don't know that I'm going to read the next two, though.
I'm going to try the next one. We'll see how it goes.
I'm definitely not going to read the next two, but I would say I think that this is a good book. I oftentimes did not find it pleasurable to read, but I also oftentimes did find it pleasurable to read, which is now knowing after the fact that it was a serial makes more sense to me.
I was reminded that friend of the pod, Bjorn, when I asked him, he's a science person, when I asked him about how he felt about the 3-body problem, he said his reviews are, Book 1, quite good and also fun seeing sci-fi set in a non-Western world.
True.
Book 2, also pretty interesting, a little plotting in parts. Part 3, what the fuck is happening and why do we now have heavy-handed and misogynistic allegory through the whole thing?
Oh, no. Well,
so beware.
I'm getting the second one from the library. We'll see how it goes.
All right. Haley, Star Wars or Lord of the Rings?
Are you ready? It's actually Ender's Game because there's bugs. There's video games. I mean, prove me wrong.
It is
I like
Ender's
it.
Game.
Yeah.
There's an internet. There's training for this huge space force that's coming. Yeah.
But there's no special boy.
There's no special boy. Thank God.
What is this book?
I think this is Star Wars.
Oh, it's absolutely Star Wars.
Sophons are like the Force.
There's literally spaceships.
There is about to be a war.
There's wizards in the video game. There is a base. Red Coast base is kind of like a Death Star.
I don't know where I come down on this one. It's not Lord of the Rings.
No.
It's got to be.
But it's not exactly Star Wars either because it has no narrative.
Yeah.
So
Ender's Game.
Well, it's not Ender's Game because
I know. It's
Ender's
not.
Game is big on characters.
What if it's Ender's Game and Moby Dick had a baby?
I don't get the Moby Dick part.
I don't really either.
This book very much reminded me of Moby Dick in some way. I don't know why. Maybe it's just the way it wasn't plot driven.
Yeah.
Maybe that's it. I'm not sure. I guess I'll go with I like the Ender's Game idea.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just a joke.
I think it's fun.
No, I know it's
I like it.
I think I'm gonna go with Ender's Game. It's more
You
Ender's
are
Game.
bugs.
I mean, Star Wars Lord of the Rings is kind of like, it can be whatever you want it to be.
Yeah, that's why it's fun.
Yeah, it's more Ender's Game than either of the other two.
Remember when Star Wars was Lord of the Rings? That was my bright, shining moment, I think.
Okay, soap stuff. I have that training a sentient fake proton to come sabotage all the science on Earth is definitely something that would have happened on Passions.
The guy writing the solution to the 3-body problem in a remote monk's village and happened to be found by the woman who's in the organization for the aliens is pretty soapy to me. Like,
Oh yeah, and
Yeah.
the people just like glancing at each other and falling in love, like
You're right.
like Wong with Yang Dong,
That's
and
pretty
then
soapy, too.
Mike Evans and
Mike Evans,
yay,
the
they
name
just
is-
like cross paths.
3
and
years later,
3 years later, he's like, "I need to see you," and she's like, "Okay."
he sends a postcard.
He was like, I use all my money and talk to the aliens.
And she was like, "Yeah."
I happen to have
did
billions
they
of
say?
dollars, and I'm disillusioned with humanity. What should I do?
It's like, how is it only 2 people who talk to aliens? Like, how do they find each other? And how do they
Sexy
recognize?
billionaire living in the woods is pretty soapy, just generally
Oh
speaking.
yeah. He's like, I gave it all up until my dad died, and then
Is
I got
this-
it all back.
Is this book that isn't about people the soapiest book we have read so far?
This book is not about people.
Maybe.
Oh, I don't know.
What would another candidate be?
I mean, The Courtship of Princess Leia, man.
Yeah.
That is the soapiest book.
Well, okay.
I mean, parts of A Memory Called Empire. There's lots of intrigue.
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
I guess.
Yeah, the Memory Called Empire is, well, I've talked about Princess Gina von Omberg enough on this podcast. But yeah, it definitely has some funny soapy moments.
I mean, Demolished Man is pretty soapy.
imposter protons are like, when I was telling you guys just before we started recording, it is like when Stefano DiMera appeared to Susan as Elvis to trick her. And, yeah. All right. Coming up next time,
Woo!
it is The Uninvited by Dorothy McCardle.
I'm excited.
I'm very
It
excited.
was nominated for a Retro Hugo. Didn't win, but it was nominated, a Heinlein novel that I can't remember who won. But it was nominated for a Retro Hugo in 2018 for 1943. And it was originally published as Uneasy Freehold in 1941.
Interesting title.
That sounds very boring and legal.
All right. That's it.
Bye.
Bye.
There's another fabulous side of the three bottom problem that's almost as I cannot talk.
The three bottom problem is my favorite thing, though.